live on YouTube. Okay, time to go live.
This is John Hill.
Right. Your voice is a bit distant, Oluwaseun.
Let me turn the headline. How about now?
Yeah, very good now.
I don't think this mic is on. 98.1.
Love music, love life. You're listening to Smooth 98.1. Now is the time for us to get a comprehensive analysis of some of the top stories on Nigerian dailies. And you're welcome to join the conversation. This is Freshly Pressed on Smooth 98.1. My name is Oluwaseun, and Freshly Pressed is what you listen to every weekday from 7:30. And joining me to do the analysis this morning in the studio, I do have Gbubemi Atimomo, who's on socials at Orishega. That's Ortisega. Thank you very much, Gbubemi. Good morning.
Good morning, Oluwaseun. Good morning, Lagos. Morning, Lakunle.
Okay. And joining us virtually to also do the analysis this morning, please welcome Lakunle Yusuf, who is on socials at Lakunle70. Good morning.
Good morning, Oluwaseun. Good morning, Gbubemi. It's been a while, and I joined the vote in the jungle this week, so that's why I'm remote.
Well, thank you for joining us from the jungle. We appreciate you. And so let's get started. We are actually going to start with Lakunle on this one, and we are talking about the news, and this is coming from the Vanguard. NAFDAC, that is the National Agency for Food and Drug Administration and Control, has seized 50 trailer loads of counterfeit drugs and recovered 2 rifles, live cartridges, machetes, as well as other weapons at the Niger Bridgehead Drug Markets in Onitsha, Anambra State. Lakunle.
Interestingly, where I am, I'm just like a few hundred kilometers away from the markets we just spoke about. I was hoping that I would get there during the week, except the day is not a Monday. So it's interesting to hear this. Over the last 1 year or thereabout, there has been frequency rates at various markets, and what we've been seeing is mind-blowing. The number of places where NAFDAC had been to, the number of fake drugs and stuff that they've revealed. There's a thriving market for this thing. It means it is big business for some people. And if it is that big, then we should be finding the people who are behind it. We shouldn't just be saying we discovered the fake drugs. Who are the owners of these fake drugs? That's the first thing that we need to do. We need to disclose the owners of these shops, the owners of the buildings, the owners of the trucks, the names the trucks carrying them were registered to, the names of the businesses that are registered with CAC, all these things, the bank accounts of this. We need to know all these things. We should be disclosed openly or taken to the courts and tried. Now, the interesting part of this is the matter of I think that there had been two indications that the Director General of NAFDAC had once said recently that there had been an attempt on her life. And this report also says that there is an attempt on the life of the zonal, the Southeast director of the agency. Now, the discovery of guns, ammunition, and stuff in those places could mean a few things. One, since I think during the military era, many of our local markets, we've outsourced the security to personal and private sources. That's where you have your OPC doing night guards. You have there was a time there was what they call the Bakassi group in the Southeast, and so on and so forth. So if you go to some markets in Lagos today at closure, they enforce that everybody should leave the markets the same time, and they have armed guards in there. So you ask yourself, who authorized the arming of these guards with ammunition and guns and so on and so forth? Do they have records of these things? And so the indication from this report that this might be a potential plan to assassinate or to make an attempt on the life of the agency director in that region may not be far from the truth, because we need to solve those problems. Then the third part of my, before I hang up on this one, then, is that we now need to be very careful, all of us that take drugs regularly, what drugs we consume, where we buy it from. Many drug making organizations have anti-faking devices or indicators on their products. We need to get educated about these things. We need to know where we bought the last drug we've taken. Our hospitals, our pharmacists, they need to help us in this regard as well, to be able to ascertain the source of the drugs they put on display and they dispense at the hospitals for us to consume. And finally, our laws need to be stringent on things like this. We might hear people talk about human rights, this and that and that and that. Yes, but you see, somebody who is making and selling fake drugs, fake foods for me to eat is also committing a crime that is even bigger than whatever human rights can be. So we need to have stringent laws. We don't need to catch everyone doing this thing. Maybe we catch one or two and use them as example for the others. Maybe this will help. It's because we have not done this that the thing is growing bigger as it is. And I hope that our government would take this serious and help prevent people consuming things that will kill them slowly.
Thank you. Join the conversation by sending your WhatsApp messages to 0809 444 0981. Again, 0809 444 0981. You can also join us on YouTube at Smooth 981 FM Lagos. Since Lakunle has touched on the human rights, we can as well come to you, Gbubemi, for the story. The National Human Rights Commission, NHRC, has opposed the proposal by the National Agency for Food and Drug Administration and Control, NAFDAC, seeking the death penalty for those involved in the sale of counterfeit drugs. What do you think?
Okay, so last week when the Director General, Professor Ojusolade, was talking about the proliferation of fake drugs and all the discoveries that they had made while they were reading the three largest in distribution markets. One of the things that was mentioned was a sort of like an advocation for what's it called now?
The death penalty.
Death penalty. To be instituted on these people, because the logic, quote unquote, as I understood it, was these people are causing the death of millions of people. It's only appropriate that they also suffer an equal fate. Now the National Human Rights Commission has said that long and short, irrespective of whatever act of crime that these people have committed, their rights should still be protected, and they must be guaranteed that, they recognize the fact that the acts that these people have perpetrated are very, very heinous, but they also say that in spite of that, you must also consider their human rights. Now, one of the first things I like to think about in things like this is if people who set themselves up to consciously bring harm to large groups of people, can we still say that these people still have human rights, quote unquote, in that sense? Haven't they given up their human rights by perpetrating the crimes that they have? That's an argument that some people make, in considering things like this. The National Human Rights Commission is, however, not of that opinion. They also recognize, that not even just with, the NAFDAC situation, but across the country, some other states have enacted some laws that they have said infringe on the human rights of people. So, for example, Edo State has an anti-cultism law that also promotes the death penalty. There's another state that also has something like that. So one of the things I noted, whilst discussing this story last week was, in spite of the fact, that some states have death penalty attached to some crimes, we've seen a resistance in the execution of the death penalty in that case. I don't think there's any Nigerian governor that has approved the death penalty in recent times. Most of the time, they just leave these people in prison, you know, and awaiting a final decision where they eventually, a lot of times, you know, will end up spending life in prison. Now, so like I said, so the argument is, so the discussion rather is, what do we now do to people who bring this grievous harm to people? Do we just say that it's enough to, for example, let's say the maximum punishment is life imprisonment. Is life imprisonment adequate to cover for the crimes that they have committed, or is taking their life commensurate to that because they've taken other people's lives? The argument is still out there. You know, for me, the fundamental reason, the fundamental discussion is, do such people still have a right, quote unquote, to state that their human rights should still be considered? I'm of the opinion that, you know, as much as possible, stringent penalties must be awarded to such people. You know, the stringent penalties is the death penalty. Maybe all well and good, probably, but like I noted, there's no governor that has approved the death penalty. One thing I think is more important when factoring over this, that governments must be decisive in ensuring that such people are, you know, face the full extent of the law, and they must face, you know, the consequences of their actions. We can't just, you know, let such people go with a slap of the wrist. This is a national tragedy. You know, there was a documentary I saw once about, sponsored by one of these foreign agencies, about a certain personality who was very, very active in selling fake drugs, actively selling fake drugs. And one day her child fell ill. She was not at home. Somebody rushed to go and buy medicine. Unknowingly, the medicine was a fake drug. So she ended up suffering the consequences of the actions that she had been, you know, in promoting. So these are the kind of things that we need to talk about.
Just a little clarity here when we talk about these people. For specifics, are we talking about the people who are selling them? Are we talking about the people who are making them? Or are we talking about the people who are funding them?
So I'd say
May
maybe
I?
all of them. Okay, Lakunle.
Yeah,
Okay.
and I was going to say maybe all of them, because I'm saying, can you hear me?
Yes,
I
we
said
can.
all of them, in my opinion, the manufacturer, the seller, the distributor, all of them should have, maybe at some point, the law should include that before you lift as a logistic agency, you need to establish that what you are carrying or what you are lifting or what you are transporting on behalf of anybody is actually authentic, to the point that everybody in the chain from manufacturing to distribution gets a part of the punishment. For context about capital punishment in Nigeria, I don't think there's, only once that I can easily remember, that a governor has signed a death sentence warrant, and that was when Senator Adams Oshiomhole was governor in Edo State. Only that once in the last 25 years that one can easily remember. The death sentence, even though it was for a different offense, actually. So apart from the fact that death sentences exist in our law, the people who should sign the warrant for the execution are sentimental and religious about it. And people who commit crimes that have this death sentence on it know this. So they are not so much worried that, okay, it should be the court to say death sentence, but nobody's going to sign it. And then you have so many people in our correctional facilities on death row, 10 years, 15 years, that have not been executed for the crimes they have committed. I hope I'm not sounding callous with this, but because this matter of drugs faking, food we eat, drugs that are supposed to make us well, makes us get worse. I mean, I feel so strongly about it that it has to be some very strong punishment. It cannot just be just go to jail and go and sit down. I mean, that's it.
All right, thank you. Do you have anything to add?
Yes, I just wanted to add that we also need to remember that some of these drugs are also imported as well. So it also helps to probably follow that chain to whatever countries these drugs are being imported from.
It's a long line. You can send in your
Absolutely.
messages and be a part of the conversation. WhatsApp is 0809 444 0981. On WhatsApp, Mr. Ajayi Olonilua from Magodo says, "Good morning, Oluwaseun. I think NAFDAC is doing a great job in the war against fake drugs with this massive seizure of 6 trucks of counterfeit drugs and even ammunition. The damage being done to the health of the masses by these criminal activities is better imagined. God help us." You mean 50? Then Sheon Odiase from Surulere says, "Good morning, Oluwaseun team. For fake drugs, some foreign manufacturers developed an app to verify authentic product. NAFDAC should take a cue from that. A simple USSD code would be beneficial. Life sentence or death penalty for anyone that's caught." Yes, I know that there was a time that they did that, including scanning some QR codes.
Or a scratch.
Yes,
where
the
you
scratch
can
being a
text the
sentence.
number.
Yeah. Oluwaseun on WhatsApp says, "I'm in support of the death penalty for knowingly selling, manufacturing, and importation of fake drugs, not forgetting kidnappers, bandits, terrorists, and ritualists too." Then Ibrahim Zakari says, "Good morning, smooth analyst. The war on drugs is not a walk in the park. The government of the day lacks capacity to take on these drug lords. They are merely exposing the present NAFDAC peer to danger. How come capital punishment is so difficult to implement on all the actors of this cartel? Too bad the downtrodden are at the receiving end. Shame." All right, we move on to this really long story that has been in the news for a bit. And this time, this one is coming from The Punch. Sexual harassment. Senate dismisses Natasha's petition. Kogi Senator shuns panel. Gbubemi.
Okay, so for those of us that have been keeping tabs on this story, Senator Natasha Akpoti-Uduaghan accused the Senate President, Senator Godswill Akpabio, of sexual harassment. And this came after a series of prior events where at first she had been made to, change her seat in the Senate, which she resisted. She had accused, the Senate President, quote unquote, of, disfavoring her motions, sort of saying that he didn't want, her to progress within the Senate, quote unquote, just to put it that way. And she eventually, and then at some point, the Senate President's media advisor, she said, posted an article on Facebook saying that she was always indecently dressed and all of that. So she, I think she sued him and the media advisor to court for that, for defamation of character. And then she went on a TV station to make some further allegations, saying that the Senate President has sexually harassed her when she visited his house with her husband present, although she said he wasn't aware of what had happened. So she raised the petition and she submitted it at the Senate yesterday. The Senate President forwarded that petition to the Committee on Ethics, Privileges, and Public Petitions. And that committee subsequently threw out the petition and said that they dismissed it and said that, she didn't follow the proper procedure. So I just want to just highlight what they said. Okay, so they said that her actions were in violation of the Senate standing rules, and they cited rules 41-7. I'll just quickly summarize that. A petition may only be presented to the Senate by a senator who shall affix his name at the beginning thereof. He also said that the petition must be confined to, the senator must confine the petition to brief statements of the parties from where it came. All petitions shall be ordered without questions put on the table. No senator may present to the Senate a petition signed by himself or herself. And the Senate should not receive or tolerate any matter to which actions are pending in any law. Now, Senator Natasha Akpoti-Uduaghan presented that petition by herself, which according to the Senate standing rules is in violation of that. They also said that the matter was before the courts. She has said that the matter before the courts is the matter of defamation, which is completely separate from her allegation of sexual harassment against the Senate President. The report goes on and on, just to, highlight how she should have followed the proper process. I think, yes, maybe she may not have followed the proper process according to their standing rules, but these are weighty allegations, and I believe that it is not enough for her to have just, it's not enough for them rather to have just dismissed the petition. Maybe, the onus is on her to find someone that can file that petition on her behalf. Will that happen? I'm not quite sure. But even at that, like I said, these are weighty allegations. The Senate president, his integrity has been placed on the line. I believe that this is something that he needs to address. A lot of people have also cited that this is not necessarily the first time he's been accused of sexual harassment, citing the former DG of the NDDC, who also claimed at the time, that he wanted to have sexual relations with her, and all of that. So, this is not something that should be taken lightly, either by the Senate president or by the senators. I think I'm not quite sure what the process would be regarding this, because if the senator Udwaha doesn't find someone to raise that petition on her behalf, does that mean that the matter will just die down, or what are they saying, that her only recourse would be to go to court? I believe that before she should even go to court on that matter, the Senate itself should take this as an opportunity to self-examine the activities of the Senate president. At least do some preliminary investigation before you take the matter out. Because what this is implying is that if she cannot find a means to follow the standing rules to present that petition, her only other recourse would be to go to the court of law, which I don't think should be the first step. So, like I said, this is an opportunity for the Senate to sit down together, and establish the veracity of the Senate president's integrity in that sense, quote unquote. The ball is in his court. If he will not take actions, I believe that the other senators should also sit down together and reason and find the means to clear his name, quote unquote.
The closest we've had to that is him saying that he would never disrespect any woman because he was raised by a single mother. He has 4 daughters, he's got sisters, and he's not, in his words, guilty.
So let me just add to that. I think that's a sentimental statement, quote unquote. Because if we want to do deep analysis of people who have, sexually harassed people, we can find that they probably have the same circumstance. And if we want to analyze some people who may not have sexually harassed people, we may find that they were not in a loving home, they didn't have a reason to learn how to respect women and all of that. So, I believe we should just stick to the facts rather than, raising sentimental claims.
All right, let's take some quick messages and then we talk about something else. From Deji, in Kaduna, 2 were sentenced to surgical castration and death by hanging. Another got life imprisonment. We must take a definite stand on punishment for fake drug crime. If not death, let it be life with hard labor or send them to North Korea. The governors do not have clean hands, so how will they commit to death sentences? Dutton said 2 things can be right. The allegations are weighty and needs to be investigated. The Senate needs to self-regulate and do some work to show integrity of the chambers. Secondly, she should follow the right rules because unfortunately, the law is neither sentimental or emotional. And then we have Idima Putsa from Surulere. I pray that impunity won't kill Nigeria. Why strike out Natasha Akpabio-Mata? In a sane country, Akpabio would have resigned. Nigeria is a country where anything goes in governance. This is why our Senate would remain a rubber stamp Senate. Oluwaseun says, if I hear say them not throw out our petition, of course they would. Birds of the same feathers flock together. They are going to shut her down, of course. It wasn't unexpected. Moreover, no other senator would want to stand by her because they're all busy kissing Akpabio's ring and that of the president, though I'm more disappointed at the other female senator anyways. In a saner country, he would have stepped down to be or been made to step down. But alas, this is Nigeria. Barrister Dan Okuda from Igondo says, good morning, the crew. No matter the procedural defect in the petition, the Senate ought to have looked into it as it affects the most presiding officer of the assembly. Please, Oluwaseun, where's Ayo? He is on leave, but he will be back soon. All right, let's go on to this one, Lakunle. And 2 days ago, we had the report from the Nigerian government confirming that a new payment platform, the Treasury Management and Revenue Assurance System, TMRAS, will replace Remita as the government's revenue collection facility from the 4th of March. Now, in new reports, it is said that it's not replacing it, but it will be integrated. Which one do we believe?
This a typical Nigerian government activity that we can just wake up one morning and boom, we hear a new direction, a new notice, a new activity. And particularly, I'm concerned particularly that this involves money. But I want to also assume that before this announcement, there would have been a lot of engagement between all the parties involved, that is, and the office of the accountant general. I also want to assume that all these dates that are put on this report, even though I think I saw the report like 2 or 3 days ago first, as reported by Punch. Then, I also want to assume that transition in technology is not always this swift and fast. So these dates may just be dates to just make you think that, okay, we are working. It's probably going to be longer than this, yeah. And once government has made these announcements, it's certain that they're going to do it. What this just means is that they are moving from one system of collection and payment to another one. I also hope that they make the owners of these TMRAS are Nigerians, because it will be a travesty of justice if you moved on from a Nigerian owned and developed system to a foreign one. And by and large, Remita has served the purpose for which it was instituted in the first instance over time. Whoever thought that governments can have a single point of collection of all its monies and taxes and dues to it, and also being able to also distribute it from the same point. So in this regard, we'll just need to still wait and see how it goes. I want to also assume then that over the next 1 or 2 years, the transition will still be ongoing. It cannot be this sudden. I am certain of that one. And okay, the questions that people have been asking, I'm not going to be asking those questions anyway, because it is government's business. Governments can decide how they want to collect their money, who they want to use to collect their money. And also, so the important thing is just that the money collected is accounted for and accountable for. Like I said, the dates that I see here, just 1 month, March 4th to May 4th, 1 month to transit. I don't think that's possible. I'm not aware that that transition had been happening in the background before now. So I want to assume that over the next 1 or 2 years, that transition will still be ongoing. I'm also not aware that any of the banks has been given this instruction by the OAGF, because of course that is the easiest general point where people can still interface with the TMARS. I don't imagine that they will tell us to go and download an app or to go to a particular website to be using it. I want to imagine that the easiest point of contact for people to pay government will still be our various money deposit banks. I'm not aware that the banks have had anything about this transition as at yesterday. They could have had as at yesterday evening and between yesterday evening and this morning. But as at yesterday afternoon, I'm not aware that any of the banks have had this instruction from the UAGF to do this, right? So that's one of also the reasons I think that the transition is going to take longer than the 1 month interval that we see on this thing. However, we need to also recognize what Remita has done over the last 13 years for Nigerian government. The owners of that platform deserve a national award, because at the time it was brought on board, nobody believed that it was doable or it was possible. And within a period of about 1 year, not more than a year, they made it happen. So I think that in closing or in ending the contract with Remita, the government needs to recognize them, and maybe the owners get some form of national recognition for making that possible.
Thank you. Now, in very, very few words, emphasis on very, stakeholders back the bill for the 30% local processing of raw materials before exports. This is coming from The Guardian. Gbubemi.
Yes, this is quite common. I mean that
most of our exports are largely in raw form. So, for example, we export crude oil, we export ginger, we export cocoa in their raw forms. What this bill seeks to establish is some form of processing at least to 30% level before it's exported out of the country. And the implication for this is that factories will need to be set up within the country to at least, begin the initial level of processing. The ultimate for that is more jobs, more economic activity within the country, probably some more foreign let me not say intervention, foreign assistance, because a lot of the companies who buy these things, in their fresh states would have to come here and process parts and then send, for ultimate production. I think what we should also, aim for is 100% processing. But one of the questions I always like to ask is when we think about things like power, transportation, many of our laws, do they really support this eventually? Because a lot of times we hear about how the stakeholders within the manufacturing sector are always complaining about the impact of the economy and their operations. So these are also things that need to be looked at, even as they seek to push this bill.
Thank you. I'll end with this message from Ernest, who says, "Good morning, Oluwaseun and the freshly pressed team. The NAFDAC's position presents only one side of the story. The process of getting NAFDAC approval is rigorous, costly, and often perceived as influenced by unethical practices. Many imported drugs and supplements are already approved by recognized regulatory bodies like the FDA, with which NAFDAC could establish affiliate partnerships to validate their certification. Some vendors feel pressured by NAFDAC's approach, interpreting it as an attempt to make them more vulnerable to undue influence and corruption." And he forwarded a message from someone saying, "And they're still demanding for 2 million for each shell before we can resume." Ooh, okay.
Quickly, can I respond to that? I think that we are
30
excusing
seconds.
bad behavior. I think we are excusing bad behavior with our response. We're talking about fake drugs. We're not talking about the inefficiency of NAFDAC. Inefficiency of NAFDAC is a different thing from fake drugs. If the person that wrote that message, if he's ever had a relative or know somebody who suffered from the consequence of fake drug, I'm sure he will not be saying this. This is a matter that is very, very crucial to survival of people. And we're saying it's because that is not an excuse because NAFDAC has inefficiency, so we should continue to excuse fake drugs. Please, let's be reasonable with these things.
I wish we could go on. Unfortunately, we're out of time for today. Maybe tomorrow, maybe not. But let's see how things go. And hopefully, we hope that people are able to, or they are able to rein this thing, and people are more cooperative. Also, that people develop a conscience. That's just the simple way to put it. Well, thank you for your time today, Lakunle. Thank you, Gbubemi. And you can find them on Twitter. You can find Gbubemi at Orishega. And you can find Lakunle at Lakunle70. You can catch up with the replay of this on YouTube at Smooth 981 FM Lagos. We continue with Smooth Breakfast, and at 8:15, it will be The Grapevine on Smooth 98.1. Thank you, gentlemen, and bye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sean, for having me.
You said?
Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, okay. Thank you for coming
Bye.
through from the jungle.